Warchant Gameday is live. Welcome in as we sit atop Hotel Indigo. Great to be back. Florida State back at home. Of course, Bobby Bowden Field, Doak Campbell Stadium. Today, 3:30 kick against Virginia Tech, who comes to town off of a win against Pitt. And maybe thinking they found something with Kyron Drones. Young man is a running quarterback, obviously, and every time Florida State fans hear that, they get a little nervous because we've had a hard time with guys like that. Most teams do, but this isn't the same fleet of foot character that gives you problems and runs for 40 and 50 yards when you have a bust. This is a bulldozer instead. So Florida State will have to be disciplined. You noted all week long on the wildly popular Jeff Cameron show that the eye discipline will be everything here because there's a lot of pre-snap stuff, and they can run some traditional option as well. So it's a good test is what I'm getting at for Florida State. Florida State's the better team by far. It's really not close when you go player for player, athlete for athlete. But at the same time, Virginia Tech's got to be feeling much better about themselves today than they did 2 weeks ago when they were really reeling. So kind of fell into finding their offense, if you will, with this quarterback, Kyron Drones, who, by the way, was 12 of 19 for 228 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushed for 41 yards and 2 scores as well. By far and away the best game he's ever had, and he's really the de facto starter. He wasn't scheduled to be the starter. Their starting quarterback got hurt after week 2. This is a bigger test, I think, for Florida State's defense today than it is for the offense. I would like to believe the offense is going to have an awful lot of success. If we flip it really quick, the early preview here, I would just tell you that if Rutgers could run the ball for well over 200 yards against Virginia Tech and Marshall could do the same, you got to believe that Florida State will be able to finally get this dormant running game going today.
No, if it's not today, when is it going to be? Rutgers, 7.5 yards per carry against Virginia Tech. That's an outrageous number for
It's kind
Rutgers.
of embarrassing, yeah.
It should be, yes. And at Florida State, if Virginia Tech doesn't sell out against the run, do what Clemson did, then you should rack up large totals. But it's just great to be back. This is October the 7th, only the second home game we've had.
And like real October weather for those of us who got here early at Hotel Indigo, up on the roof, 7th floor. Come on up if you're just now parking. I get it. Like it's an early game, an early pregame show. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you all being here. Absolutely. And it will start to fill up as we continue with the 2 hours that we have here with you this afternoon to preview this game. And it's one that I'm excited about because I feel like Florida State, we should celebrate 4-0. We should celebrate a win against LSU and a road win against Clemson, obviously. But we know they can play better. And I think it's a fair assessment as well. And if they do, they're a very real threat to make the college football playoffs. So you got a lot on your plate, and I feel like it starts today. It feels like you had the bye week come in at just the right time. Guys got healthy. You could address some of the issues that have left you kind of stunted so far, at least in terms of consistency. And now you come out and see what they want to be. What is their identity? I would think it's on the ground today to some extent, but I think you also have your pick of the litter here. Virginia Tech may choose to walk a safety up. They did in the latter games that they played because they realized they were getting gashed against the run. So I would think maybe just a single safety high. They walk one down today, and then Florida State will have their options in the middle of the field as well.
I've been anxious for this game all week, and it's not like, a fear of the results. It's just I just want to see us play, and I want to see what the coaching staff decided that we were and we weren't during the bye week. That's the thing. They both talked about it, talking about the offensive side of the ball, coordinator Alex Atkins, Adam Fuller on the defensive side. They self-scout during a bye week. That's what you do every single year. But there's a lot to scout and decide, are we really going to force the issue with this, like a too high soft shell look in coverage? Is this what we're about as a defense? And then on offense, why can't we run counter? Last year it was our bread and butter. We ran it 50 times against Miami. They couldn't stop it. They never scored 45-3. But it wasn't just that game. They did it in other games too. So what gives with the running game? So with the self-scouts that happened this past week, the coaching staff will open up a little bit about that in a press conference setting, but the truth, they will tell you the truth today by how they scheme it up, and that's why I'm so anxious to see what have they decided that we're going to be for the next eight games.
Virginia Tech opened ACC play with the win against Pitt. That was just last weekend. We alluded to it. They're making their first trip to Tallahassee since the 2018 season opener. We don't want to discuss that season opener. That went 24-3 Virginia Tech, unfortunately. We all recall what that was the debut of.
That was a great tailgate. It was a tough time. That's about it.
The Hokies, though, are just 6-14 all-time here in Tallahassee. Noles own a 23-13 and 1 advantage in the series that dates back all the way to 1955.
Wow.
Hokies have won 3 of the last 5 meetings. It's interesting. Earlier in the week on the show, the Monday we came back on the air, there was so much vitriol in the chat and on Twitter and in the inbox towards Virginia Tech, and I was trying to figure out why.
That's right, yeah.
I was like, why is everybody so angry at Virginia Tech? They're terrible. And, we beat them for a national championship, and I'm not overly concerned. But people remember that we've lost 3 of the last 5. They remember the 24-3 butt kicking that we took here. Mm-hmm. They remember they got a bad taste in their mouth, I guess. So it's kind of funny. The fan base, I think, will be live today here and get loud. I think it's going to be a packed house for Florida State and should be a real home field advantage.
My tenure as a student was so sorry in terms of the football product. It wasn't as bad as the last 5 years. These poor kids.
I blame you.
The lost decade.
Yeah.
That the best game I saw at Doak in my college tenure was in 2008 against Virginia Tech. It was a great game. There was a 4th and short with a toss pitch to the boundary. And I'm like, Jimbo, what are you doing? And Anton Smith breaks it for a touchdown. And Florida State beats Virginia Tech.
Good old Anton Smith, buddy.
So when I see this uniform come here, I think about the best game that I watched, which was a nondescript win over Virginia Tech in 2008. The program ascended from there to a national title, 29 straight, went and disappeared again. But now here we are. We're back. And this is a game where Florida State is between 24 and 26 points favorites today in Vegas. It's not about the result. It's about the process. And what does the process look like today? Looking forward to it.
Well, and I would think Mike Norvell is just as eager as you are and the rest of us are to see what he's got now in terms of what can they be offensively. You mentioned they've struggled to run counter, but, that doesn't preclude you from running outside zone, inside zone, power, any number of things that you can run. If this team's identity is not counter, so be it. I mean, you have options here, and you have a deep backfield. You've got a mobile quarterback. You've got a plethora of tight ends, one in particular that could really help you in the run game is Marquiston Douglas. We'll see what his role is today.
Well, I'll tell you, so Virginia Tech's a great example. Last week against Pitt, counter was their tendency breaker play because they were just running quick toss pitches to the back. That was their base.
Yeah.
That's we're the opposite. When we're rolling, counter is our base, and then you see that toss pitch to try and keep them honest. There are other ways to get that, bread and butter counter play going, and it might be to run more to the outside. We'll see. Again, it's just personnel decisions that they've made. We could talk about the offensive line and what that's going to look like moving forward. The running back room. How quickly do you stick with your top 2 guys if they're still scuffling and then they look to be in between? There were a couple of big runs that were out there against Clemson that our backs did not capitalize on. It was blocked up properly, but our backs did not capitalize on. If those mistakes continue to be made, how quickly does Mike Norvell look to one of his guys on the sidelines, tap him on the shoulder pads, and say, go in, Rodney Hill, go in, Keziah Holmes? Same thing for the middle of the field. What are we going to do with the slot receivers? They haven't existed so far this season. So when they are on the field, who are they going to be? Mike Norvell has talked a lot this week about getting Ja'Kai Douglas and Kentron Poitier back. They're close to being able to play. We'll find out in a short period of time whether they can go. Are they going to be the primary guys in the slot? How often do we run double tights? Like all of these things, we are revisiting those questions because Clemson was about the result. Find a way to win on the road. You hadn't done there in 10 years. You did it. Now let's get the process tightened up because I think style points, are going to matter here for this year's college football playoff. A lot of years, that if you go undefeated or you have one loss, if you're Florida State, you're going to be in. This year, style points kind of matter. So let's get the style going today a little bit.
Florida State is number 5 in this week's AP poll. It is the 5th consecutive week FSU's been ranked in the top 5, the program's longest streak since 2013-2014, might note, when Florida State was in the top 5, by the way, for 27 consecutive polls. This is it's an interesting game because, like you said, we're 4-0 with that win, that overtime win over Clemson, a game in which you trailed, by 10 twice, 17-7, 10-0. You came back in both those situations and you got that win. That shows real toughness, but it wasn't aesthetically pleasing. Many of the wins haven't been, save for the second half against LSU, and I think we're waiting for them to round into form and really kind of find their identity, as you're saying. I would tell you that I think that they have a lot of options here today, and we're going to know a little bit about the health of Jordan Travis. If they don't run him today, then they're still waiting, and they can afford to do that. I think they should be able to run traditionally without him. But I am curious to see where Jordan's at because he did not look like the same player who finished out last season, really at any point this year. He's had a great second quarter against Clemson. He had a great second half against LSU. But he's really not pieced, or second quarter against Boston College. He hasn't really pieced everything together yet for 4 quarters or for 3 quarters when he's out there.
The second quarter against Clemson, too.
Yeah,
he was a hero in that quarter.
Yeah, boom, 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 right down the field and make good decisions.
4th and 1s, getting up to the line, seeing an opening to sneak it in for a touchdown. He was a beast in that quarter. But the problem is when 3/4 of the game, you're saying what gives?
Yeah.
He was better last year through 4 games than he has been this year. I know that sounds crazy because we're 4-0. We beat LSU and Clemson. But he was a better football player last year than this. He's got plenty of time to right the ship, though, starting today.
I'm going to give Florida State an awful lot of credit, though, because the winning plays and the things that you can do to overcome the inconsistencies are what they've done. They've been very, very good on defense in the red zone. They've bowed up and forced teams to kick field goals. They've won some 4th downs. We think of the LSU game, the goal line stands, multiple. They've done those things. And then conversely, on offense, they've been outstanding in the red zone. Florida State is a perfect 17 for 17 on the season in trips to the red zone. You can't do better than 17 for 17. And if you're wondering how many of those are touchdowns, well, it's 14. So they scored touchdowns.
That's the big number.
Yeah, they've scored touchdowns when they've gotten in the red zone. But remember this. We can't just overlook the 17 for 17, regardless, if let's say those were 10 touchdowns and the rest were field goals. We weren't automatic to make field goals a year ago.
That's right.
And so far they have been this year. So it's pretty impressive to see what Florida State's been able to do in the red zone this year. That's despite the fact that they've had problems on the offensive line. Ordinarily, condensed fields lead to real problems and exposure on your offensive line when defenses can cheat up. And yet that hasn't been the case. So they've found a way, even in their inconsistencies, to be good in areas. And Jimbo Fisher used to say it. I hate to reference him right now. Obviously, we've moved on to bigger and better things. But Jimbo Fisher used to talk about winning situations. You could be bad in situations and lose a game after controlling it from 20 to 20. And you could be great in those situations and steal a game maybe that you didn't deserve to. And I think that's what they did against Clemson. They stole a game that perhaps statistically it would indicate you didn't deserve to win that game.
No, agreed. And, I think low-key, one of the biggest plays of the season to date was a 48-yard field goal off the foot of Ryan Fitzgerald.
And it's down the heart with room to spare.
Yeah. I mean, if he misses that, I don't know. I don't know what, because great field position for Clemson.
And we'll never know, Tom.
And we never have to know. No. But think about how much time we spent the offseason harping on that battle
consternation
between FSU and Fitz. And, what are we comfortable? Can we at least get comfortable from 40 yards? Can we do 40 and in? That's not too much to ask at Florida State. And then here it is. You have an illegal procedure penalty where you're going to have a first down and you're probably going to score a touchdown on that drive. That's the second week in a row they had. That can't happen today. That's one thing we're looking for. No more procedure penalties. That's on coaching. But you get bailed out by the foot of Ryan Fitzgerald. Who had that on their bingo card for this season? But that's how a season can turn from kind of good to pretty good to great, is when you need somebody to come through in the clutch like Kalen DeLoach did with the sack, the strip, the fumble, and the fumble recovery, which turned that game on its head.
Yeah.
Clemson's about to go up 2 scores. That's game is
probably going to
over.
be your ball game, yeah.
Right. When you need to have that play, you get that play. That was not the case last year. When we needed to have the play here at Doak against Wake, we didn't get it. Same thing for Clemson, same thing for NC State. But we're starting to make those plays. Now, tighten it up, get your process cleaned up, because we know you're tough mentally. Now let's see you have the aptitude offensively that we've all expected.
Yeah, Mike Norvell talked about the self-scout, talked about personnel, talked about who they were close to getting back, some of the guys they are getting back. That'll be interesting to see here today as well. We don't know whether or not Robert Scott's going to make the start. It's up in the air. We don't know whether or not Akeem Dent will be back, and that's another thing that we have to wait on for game time.
It's another thing, the moratorium as you get closer to kickoff. Robert Scott has been talked about publicly, so I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Last week when I saw him in full pads for the bye, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I can't get into how much work he was doing, but full pads, walked right by me at Wednesday's practice before the break of the bye. I thought for sure you wouldn't see him then, if at all. Like, you would have him after the bye week and they would ramp him up from that point. But at that point, I started to believe, because he was in crutches. I mean, we all saw that. That's publicly visible. But he was on crutches, and it didn't look good. So for him to be in full pads a week and a half ago is a good sign that even if he cannot go today, you are most certainly getting him back in the near future.
Yeah, you're on the cusp of getting him back. But I actually think the more important, not to dismiss Robert Scott, he is an important piece to the puzzle.
Learned that in the Clemson game.
But Akeem Dent is really the guy that I think we're most anxious to see if he comes back. The secondary has not been the same without him, in particular tackling. He's had a hard time. Has his replacement, Kevin Noles, has really struggled in that role. It's unfortunate. I like the young man. He's a hard worker, all those things. He cares deeply, but he hasn't made plays. So, you need to get Akeem Dent back. You feel more secure about how in control they are on the back end, passing guys off, understanding and communicating. That has also been a problem. So we'll see if that gets remedied today. Again, you're coming off a bye week. You should see a team that puts its best foot forward. They had a chance to get healthy. They had a chance to assess. They had an extra time to install. They had all kinds of things they could do to better themselves and find the consistency of which we speak. So I think that you will see Florida State's favored today. By the way, that line dropped
Did it get under 24?
It's 23.5, and I jumped
Wow.
it today. So I just I couldn't believe it. When I saw it go down under 24, I went, that's a key number. I'm going to do it. But here's the thing. Like, I think people, including odds makers, are saying, come on, Florida State.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure what
Right.
you are.
Prove it.
Prove
Yeah.
it. And that number keeps going down. Now, sometimes that's an indication of, again, personnel not playing.
Yeah.
And Vegas can find those things out on occasion. I don't know the reason that continues to decrease, but it does tell you that a lot of the action goes the other way.
Yeah, they can learn about a plan, too. Like, I don't think it's rocket science here, but if you're playing Florida State and you're outgunned,
Well, you're shorting the game.
Your best friend is your offense staying on the field for every waking second that it can. Like, my goal, if I'm a coach installing for Florida State, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I call over the offense and say, guys, we need TOP. I need 35 minutes time of possession to have a prayer against this team.
Well, they want to run the ball, and they ran the ball over 50 times. So against Pitt, so you realize that is their game plan, Tom, not just because it's wise, but it's really what they do.
Yeah.
They have now fallen into an identity. And I think that's important for any team is to find their identity. We're talking about our team finding that identity today. But Virginia Tech found theirs a week ago. They now know this is what they are. They got a running quarterback.
Yeah.
He's 230-plus pounds. You got a back that's a little over 205 and can break tackles. You know you're not electric down the field. You know you don't have playmakers on the outside. They do have a 6'5 receiver that might beat you on the jump, but he's not a guy that's a burner. So they don't have these weapons that you've seen some of the other teams, including Clemson, line up with. So they have to possess the ball. They have to shorten games. I think if you're Virginia Tech, there's no question you want to run the ball and maintain possession. And I think really kind of control the middle of the field there and win field position.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's getting into 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. Because you're going to go for it on 4th down. So you got 2 plays if you're in 3rd and 3 all day, I think, if you're Virginia Tech. And the other thing is, even against Pitt, which did not have the greatest defensive line, it does not have the greatest defensive line in the world, Virginia Tech doesn't want to run up the middle against Pitt. So that means today they're going to be doing more of the same. It's perimeter runs, it's read options, it's triple options, it's misdirection. This is going to be – it's not quite like facing Paul Johnson's Georgia Tech because they will throw the ball down the field more than a true triple option team.
He's got a good arm,
and he does have a good arm.
Yeah, he's got a good arm.
Yes. So he will be apt to throwing it into our chest.
Kyron Jones is not an accurate passer, but he can really throw it down the field. So I'll give him that.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as running a triple option offense, where if you run the ball often enough, eventually we creep up, and that's when they take their shot down the field. Now they're going to have to hit 2 or 3 of those to be in this ball game. If they do, But the thing is, it's going to be an annoying offense to go against because it's not straight up. It's always misdirection. It's formations. It's pre-snap motion and shifting and all kinds of weird stuff. So you better be on your P's and Q's today if you're a defender for Florida State.
It requires a ton of discipline, but it's also, if you're disciplined, not that difficult to stop.
Correct.
If you're not peeking.
Because your defensive line is going to win the battle.
That's correct. And you can reset the line of scrimmage against a team that really wants to run. Well, now it's 2nd and 12. And now it's 3rd and 9. And you've got a guy who's an inaccurate passer. He can throw the ball down the field and he can really run it. Yep. But you make him throw from the pocket on 3rd and 9, I'm sorry, it's going to be a long day for Virginia Tech. And that's obviously the goal for Adam Fuller in this defense. But that only works if you are disciplined and you don't give up a silly play because you're peeking or you're running around a block or you're not where you're supposed to be. You don't set the edge, whatever that might be.
But there is nuance there because you can give up a big play if you're going to play more aggressive. That comes part and parcel with being more aggressive. And I think everybody from the fan base to the players themselves, the coaches have even said it on the record, they got to be a little more aggressive a little bit earlier in these games. And so we should see that today.
Yeah, sorry, Tom. Is today the day that they finally realize this is who we are?
Right.
You know, when Florida State has played well on defense this year, primarily in the second half of games, and even within those second half of games, figuring out within a quarter that they've got to scrap something
it's
like
almost
they did
like
against BC.
Screw it. Like, you know, that's what's on the headset. Screw it, guys. Go. Let's go.
Well, they have figured out that they're a man team that has to play downhill and play very, very aggressive. And I think to your point, and we've talked about this a lot, I think it's important. I thought this before the year. If you don't do something well, don't try to do it. Let's go back to what you do well. Let your athletes run. Let your athletes press. Let your athletes be athletes. And, you know, that means you're going to give up some big plays.
Yeah.
because you're going to be overly aggressive, and you're going to be susceptible to a stop and go. You're going to be susceptible to a guy misses a tackle in the backfield.
Exactly, like drones bounces. I mean, he's a large kid, so
it's
then
going to happen.
He breaks pockets, somebody's open.
But you'll live with it, Tom, as opposed to making a guy who's inexperienced, who hasn't been able to get comfortable throwing the football. You give him all day when you sit back in his zone. You give up the middle of the field. He's throwing slants time and again. He's beginning to gain his confidence.
Passing off.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is what allows a young guy or an inexperienced guy to begin to believe. But what doesn't allow for that confidence to grow is when you hit him and when you come after him and you speed him up. That clock has got to be moving. You got to get him having to quickly make decisions. Guys like this who don't have a ton of experience, they would love the idea that I can sit and wait for a guy to come open as opposed to being anticipatory. But, you got to speed their clock up.
No, agreed. And again, it's just there are trade-offs to everything. Not all broken plays against or busted plays are the same for us. If it's you're getting downhill and Kalen DeLoach gets his arms on the kid, but he breaks a tackle and somebody's open, all right, I can live with that. But if it's a coverage bust because there's motion before the snap, we don't communicate well, and a kid's running free, that's very different. And that's happened to us, especially we're more apt to it when we play a little bit softer in the back and we try to keep things in front of us. We're not very good at it. Plain and simple. But there are trade-offs. So if you see because of a blitz something comes open and he makes a hell of a throw, you tip your cap, you move on. The other thing is if slants beat you. When you play press and you're bringing pressure, you're going to get beat on a slant once in a while. It's the quickest passing route. You're going to be susceptible. It's a one-on-one situation. The advantage is to the receiver because he knows which way he's breaking. You're going to have to live with that too. I know it drives people nuts when slants are completed against us, but when you're playing press and you're giving pressure, that's going to happen sometimes.
Oh, you can force some outside leverage, though. You can change. You can. I mean, if they keep doing it, you can.
Well, I'm not saying it happens 8 times in a game. I'm just saying it's going to happen.
I was just saying it happened an awful lot. Mr. Lightfoot has chimed in and said, Tom, rep of the old school. I love it. Let's go, Noles. Appreciate that. And he thought of moving Green back to safety if the secondary doesn't get better. We've talked about it. Renardo has played safety. In fact, he was a safety and is very physical. I suppose if you feel very comfortable with yet another corner, you could do that in slating. But Renardo is your best corner right now, too. So,
he's outstanding.
Yeah, he's been
physical. He's mean. We are going to miss him. It's
funny.
We are.
He's become a good player.
When Omarion was the guy, and his freshman year when he emerged 2 years ago, he was very impressive. And so that whole offseason, you're like, really? The other guy's Renardo? And then, 8 games into last season, you go, well, Omarion can't play anymore. I don't know what's going on
Omarion at Colorado, and Renardo's your best corner.
And we're like, thank God for Renardo. If we didn't have him, what would we be looking like? But I think, to your point, it's the young players. It's the next wave of defensive backs. If you have a guy emerge at corner, then maybe Renardo does have a little bit of flexibility. He's also got to want to do that, too. I wouldn't force him to do something he doesn't want to do because he's very good at corner. But if you have a young kid step up at safety, like a Conrad Hussey or Quintarius or KJ, then you have the answers you need from within.
The only thing I'll say about Conrad Hussey, who's going to be a very good player here, they gave him an opportunity to play one play in the game against Boston College, and he was as lost as you could possibly be on the football field, and they got him out of the game. It was clear that the lights were shining bright that day for that young man. The moment was too much, and he was just overwhelmed. And I don't know, you can learn from that. You can learn from that. But we'll see. This is a home game against a team that's not really good at throwing it. So maybe he does get an opportunity.
I think the problem is, Shaheem Brown's a gifted player, but he hasn't played a whole lot either in his career. So when you're looking for somebody to be the guy who is in charge of all the signals, coordination on the field, being the extension of the coach to get guys lined up, to communicate about where a slot corner needs to be versus another safety, like Shaheem is not that level of a veteran yet, where when you put him out there with Conrad, Shaheem can say, I got you, young lad. He's young himself. Mm-hmm. He's inexperienced himself. So I think that's the drawback. Now, maybe by the end of this season or next year, Shaheem Brown could account for that when you have a freshman on the field. But it's really nice to have a safety that's a veteran that knows where everybody needs to be. Even if you give up a little bit in athleticism, I think Kevin Noles, pound for pound, is more athletic than Akeem Dent. I think he's more explosive. He gets downhill. But if you're giving him just a little bit, right, but he's not making the tackles and he's playing timid. So I'd rather have a guy that might be just a little bit slower and less athletic in Akeem Dent who can coordinate things. Again, we're not totally certain he plays today, but whenever he comes back, it's going to be a boon for the defense.
Crossing my fingers we get him back because it's also key for alignment. Really quickly, before we take our first break of the day here on Warchant Game Day, we are broadcasting live from Hotel Indigo, beginning to fill up now. People coming in here for the drinks and the food and the view. What a view it is as we turn to our right. And you can see Doak Campbell Stadium in the background, and you can see the intramural fields beginning to fill up now with
Gorgeous
cars
day.
on a gorgeous day for football. We got the big screen out here if you're on your way over. You got the air conditioning, you got the clean bathrooms, you got the good food, and all of the beverages you may want as well.
One thing to note, if you go downstairs to the lobby and you see the food situation, it's packed and you go, oh, no, I'm not going to get it. The food's
upstairs.
up here.
Yeah.
Get on the elevator, 7th floor, plenty of food, cold drinks, all that stuff is up here.
I got a question for you before we break, though. The Noles have scored on 7 of their 8 opening drives of a half this season. And those half opening drives, Florida State has scored 4 touchdowns, 3 field goals for an average of 4.6 points per drive. They score on the opening drive this afternoon.
Yeah.
I think so, too.
I wonder if you win the toss, do you take the ball this time?
They won't, but I would.
Yeah, right.
They won't, but I would. Yeah, I agree with you. It's Warchant Game Day live from Hotel Indigo. We'll be back in a moment.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from 5-star Irish O'Fell, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today.
A longtime supporter of Warchant.com programming and Florida State athletics, DeLuna Coffee proudly presents you the Warchant Game Day postgame call-in show. FSU alumni owned and operated. DeLuna Coffee's Ed and Brett Lemmix have a combined 30 years of experience in the coffee industry. DeLuna Coffee's claim to fame is their Blue Angels blend, known as the first ever food or beverage item to be licensed by a military branch. A percentage of proceeds from the Blue Angels blend, Midnight Shift, and High Noon Lawman's blend go to the U.S. Navy Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Program, the Raleigh Foundation of Pensacola, and the Escambia County Sheriff's Foundation, respectively. For a limited time only, DeLuna Coffee's Voodoo Dark Espresso Blend is buy one, get one free. Head over to DeLunaCoffee.com to check out that deal, as well as the Warchant Pick Your Poison Bundle. From west of I-4 all the way through the Florida Panhandle, look for DeLuna Coffee in your local Publix in the Florida Locals section. You can also always head to DeLunaCoffee.com today.
Welcome back. Warchant Game Day live atop Hotel Indigo, floor number 7 if you're walking in. Food's good, beer is cold, and the fans are here as we get set for Florida State, Virginia Tech. Give you a quick update. You can see the great Corey Clark is right here next to me right now. How about
thanks,
that?
everyone. Thanks. Hey, guys.
There it is.
Sit down, guys.
You did the right thing. He needs that. That's good. We got a 7-7 game between Oklahoma and Texas in the first quarter as I look at the top 25. By the way, Maryland 10, Ohio State nothing in the second quarter of that game. Missouri's up 2 touchdowns on LSU, 21-7. Make that 22-7. That LSU defense, in a word, sucks. As we go.
Yes.
The
Good
games,
word. An apt description.
Yeah, the games later today, Alabama and Texas A&M should be a good one. Same time as Florida State and Virginia Tech. We got Syracuse, North Carolina, same time. Kentucky, Georgia tonight at 7 o'clock. Michigan, Minnesota, Arkansas, Ole Miss. Notre Dame, Louisville should be an interesting game as well. All right, Corey Clark, welcome in, buddy. How
Thanks,
are
man.
you?
I'm
You doing
good, man. I'm
good.
Got Brady. Did you see Brady right in front of me?
I did. You can't miss him, all that hair.
Yeah, no lie.
You can't miss him with all that hair. What we wouldn't give for that
Man,
hair.
I'm telling you.
If you
I
had
would
hair
wear
like
it
that,
differently than that.
Here's the beauty. You could have hair like that and style it however asinine you want. It doesn't
Correct.
really matter.
He's a great illustration of that.
All right, so what do you expect to see today? Tom and I have talked a lot about how important this game is, not because we fear that they'll lose it, although if they play terribly, they could.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State's losing to Maryland right now.
Yeah, they
Things
are.
happen.
But what I would say is you ought to see a good version of Florida State today. They come off a bye week. You're playing a Virginia Tech team that doesn't have great athletes. You know exactly where that kid wants to be. He wants to run the football. He wants to run it 20-plus times. They want to run it as a team 50-plus times. This should play into a good Florida State, a disciplined Florida State, and a team that should win big. Do you agree?
I do. I want to see the offense sustain it.
Yeah.
Sustain it for, however long. Maybe they get a big lead and the starters come out of the game, but I want to see the starting offense sustain it. Run game would be nice, but just, there was a lot of – it was stops and starts the last two games, as we've talked about, and they stuttered along. And, they're too good an offense to have so many stops and starts. And this is not Clemson you're facing. This is a bad defense. So go treat them like a bad defense because you're a very good offense. That's kind of what I want to see is you kind of dictate it and run them off the field.
You can be a good offense. We've yet to see him sustain that, to your point.
Well, they did against LSU, but apparently Leon High would put up 35 against LSU.
Perhaps at this point. But, I would say that I think getting healthy will go a long way. Let's see where Jordan Travis is today. How healthy is he? Wonder if he'll run the ball. I'll tell you this. I doubt they want to run him in terms of called runs, but we'll know a little bit more about where he feels his health is at when he scrambles.
Yeah.
He's refused to take off outside the pocket when he's had opportunities. Instead, chose to make really difficult throws, going against his body, all this crazy stuff. Does he take off today and take the free 10 yards and sustain a drive that he wouldn't do against Clemson, who I understood could hit you?
Yeah.
Really talented, athletic, and he was hurting.
And it's hard to know, but if he doesn't, well, that's not a great sign because it means he still doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And moving forward, you want him to feel right because, I guess starting next week, the week after against Duke, you're going to be facing good teams that can beat you if you don't play well, and you want to be working at peak capacity. And him not being able to run isn't Florida State offense at peak capacity because if you remember the Florida game, they won that game because of his legs.
Him, yeah.
Because of his legs.
Yeah.
And that they didn't have to do that a lot last year, but it was good to know it was there when they needed it.
If I ask you who's the leading rusher today, you say?
I
Trey Benson?
can't pick the Virginia Tech quarterback.
No.
I'll say Trey Benson. I think they'd like to get him going.
Well, the reason I asked you that is that you hinted that you thought you saw some signs of him running harder.
Right. Yeah.
So
he
that's
made some
why,
plays in that game too.
Yeah.
Like it was a forgotten kind of play, but on their first touchdown drive, he makes a really nice back shoulder catch, which isn't really part of his MO necessarily. And I think it's like just him making plays in big games probably gets him going a little bit.
Get back to that, right?
Yes,
Be nice.
Yeah. And he had a run where he got tackled but stayed up and got another 7 or 8 yards. I just thought he looked more like himself. It's just you couldn't really see it because they didn't have anywhere to run necessarily in that game. But they will have alleys and holes to run through in this one.
Well, I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was a valid point by you that on a day in which they run for just over 20 yards, that was a time where you could see him making plays where he hadn't. And they may go unnoticed when you see a stat line like that. But the truth of the matter was he did break some tackles, and he did find a way to make some plays. So let's hope they get him back to running and doing what they're supposed to do there. Also today, I would think, Corey, do we see something in the middle of the field? Because that has not been part of the option. Florida State has not attacked the middle of the field down the seams much. It's been all out on the edges. We joked last week. It was a lot like, or 2 weeks ago, looked a lot like the Jeff Bowden offense. Just throw it up on those 9 routes. You got guys that can attack the middle of the field here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's been 2 weeks since they played, so they did a lot of self-scouting, right? They did a lot of self-evaluation. I think that's one thing they would have noticed, that we're not exploiting the middle of the field like we can, like Jordan did a lot last year.
A ton. It's what changed his whole MO.
So I don't know if it means running Keon on more of those routes, more of those in-cutting routes than just down the sideline. Because, a lot of times it just feels like they're throwing up to him like he's Tamori and Terry. Like, and he's so much more of a developed receiver than him. Use him in all aspects of the field because they do that with Johnny. Johnny made a couple big catches in the middle of the field, including on the last. Well, it would have been the game-winning field goal drive, but they didn't get any more yards. But that third down catch he made was in the middle of the field. That was a nice catch and a nice play, but that was like the only time they threw it in the middle of the field all game.
Today is a success if, don't say win the game. Of course, they got to win the game. We know that. But you will look at today as a big step forward for this team and really start getting excited about what's possible the rest of the way and a wide open landscape in college football right now.
Yeah.
I think we know it's wide open. Why not us, is what Florida State fans are saying.
Look around the country, legitimately.
Absolutely. So what will you think today in terms of a successful afternoon looks like for Florida State?
And you said, no, I can't say win the game.
Well, they got to win the game. We know that. That's a given.
The defense plays like it did in the second half against Clemson. Carry that over, because I do think even though it's been stopping and starting and they haven't been great by their standards, we know this offense is going to be good all year. Maybe elite, maybe really, really good. The defense is still a question mark. If they come out and carry over the second half of the Clemson game, don't give this kid just easy throws. Make it hard for him. Then I think
Scream it from the mountaintops.
Then you're like,
brother.
okay, man, that's Syracuse is going to have an issue with his team. Duke's going to have an issue with his team. You can go on the road and steamroll Wake Forest. I just want to see the defense come out and play better from the start, because they'll figure it out eventually. But quit waiting until the second quarter of the second half to figure it out. Start the game having figured it out.
I think we would all breathe a sigh of relief. He's Corey Clark. You'll read his story afterwards. More importantly, you'll see the rap. Love the rap. You and I are the Warchant rap afterwards. It's the highlight of my week, and I don't say it sarcastically. I like the Warchant rap.
That was very sarcastic,
no,
but I appreciate
not.
it. All right.
I'm telling you, I like it.
Okay,
I legitimately
good.
like
Thank you.
We both are sarcastic asses, but I'm telling you, I love the Warchant rap.
Your show's still on?
Still on the air.
1 to 3?
I don't read your columns either,
I
but
know you don't.
do watch the rap.
The only time you read my column was to tell me what an idiot I was for what I wrote. You never commented on one of my columns.
By the way, you had to love getting that text that night. You were like, oh, my God, he's like...
It's a great story. So he never comments on my columns ever. Never says, like, hey, I really appreciate it.
Hey, that's not true. One time I wrote, said, good job.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. But this was like, he quoted the lead of my column and said, we must have watched different games. I can't believe how you wrote that about the Georgia Tech game last year. And how I liked what I saw overall because they dominated the team. I just want to point out to you, Jeff Cameron, they have not lost since I wrote that column. Since you told me how dumb I was for being
I told you how dumb.
Encouraged by what I saw that game. They're now 10-0.
The angle you took that afternoon was preposterous. Corey Clark, Warchant.com. My dear friend and colleague, thank you for joining us as always. It is Warchant Game Day. We'll come back for more atop Hotel Indigo in a moment.
That got testy.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from five-star Irish O'Fell, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold, 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at Warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today.
Picture this. Saturday morning, November the 4th, 9 a.m. Game day's on your TV, and FSU has dismantled their ACC schedule to this point. They're 8-0. Kirk, Reese, McAfee, and Desmond are debating whether the Noles are going to be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the playoff, and JT13 is the front man for the Heisman. Life's pretty good, and guess what? It's going to get better, because your DeLuna Coffee Warchant bundle came in the mail yesterday. You tell your wife, I'm not superstitious, as you pour your DeLuna Voodoo Coffee blend into your new stainless steel tumbler. You add a scoop of cocoa to die for from DeLuna and mutter a curse under your breath onto the pit's secondary. No voodoo necessary for that, though. The opponent was doomed from the start. Johnny and Keon, they don't need DeLuna's help to make the opponent's life a living hell. But in honor of the 2023 FSU offense, enjoy the DeLuna Coffee Pick Your Poison bundle. Check the drop-down menu for all available options. Wake up and enjoy DeLuna Coffee today. Head to DeLunaCoffee.com. That's DeLunaCoffee.com.
Welcome back to Warchant Game Day. Great to be with you. Appreciate you being here with us. A hearty welcome back. Appreciate that, obviously. As we're live, we are at Hotel Indigo. It is a great setting. Plenty of people here. Cool breeze blowing in right now. We've got the intramural fields, which serve as a parking lot, beginning to fill up quite nicely. Doak Campbell Stadium in the background. Picture perfect day to play football. I can't imagine you'd want to be anywhere else but right here, right now for Florida State, Virginia Tech. Hotel Indigo does it right. The beverages are cold. The food is delicious.
The register's in the house.
Yeah, how about that? And so it's all good, man. We're excited. 10-7, Oklahoma leads Texas right now. That's going to be a fun game. It's going to continue to be a
Barn
fun
burner,
game.
man.
Yeah, let's see what ends up happening there. And we appreciate you joining us on Warchant Game Day. If you're there in the StreamYard, we appreciate that on Warchant TV.
In fact, there was a gentleman yesterday that we need to get to from StreamYard. Our apologies to Robert Benton if he's out there watching right now. Robert, hope you're enjoying the show. If not, if anybody knows Robert, find him and tell him we answered his question.
Well, we're about to answer his question because I failed to do so yesterday. I feel bad about that, Robert. We apologize. Go ahead. Ask that question. What was it?
So he was asking, essentially, if you've got a round-robin situation in which the 3 teams are LSU, Clemson, and Miami, how would you look at...
Clemson.
All right, well, there you go. Robert, the answer to your question.
It's Clemson.
That's interesting because Miami's the undefeated one and Clemson is the 2-loss team. They're in last in the ACC.
Yeah, they won't be.
Tied for last.
They won't be at the end of the year. It's Clemson. That is, from a personnel standpoint, the best team that we'll face this year, unless we get to the college football playoff.
So what has your
obviously.
journey with Miami been like this year? I think you were more afraid of their potential a few weeks ago than you are today. And what changed?
I still think they're – I said before – now, I'm wrong on one, and I think I'm right on the other. Our fan base coming into this season, at least judging by my inbox and tweets and everything else that I see, and that's just one small percentage of a voice for fans, but on the message boards, you name it, seemed to indicate that they thought both Florida and Miami were terrible. And I said, whoa, I'm not so sure that's true. Just based on their personnel, when you project draftability and all that other stuff, I thought that Miami made a very necessary change. They fired their offensive coordinator. They brought a guy in who I thought was going to help Tyler Van Dyke, and he has. Mm-hmm. And we know that a healthy version of him with an improved offensive line is fairly dangerous. It's not like he's devoid of skill. And they brought in a tackle from Alabama to help shore up that offensive line. He's their best offensive lineman and playing well. They're able to run the ball. They can throw off a play action. And they're not devoid of weapons. They're not elite. They're not elite, but they're not devoid of weapons. So I just kind of thought that they would play a better brand of football this year. And I think that's true. No matter what happens the rest of the way for them, they're a better team than they were a year ago. Now, look, Florida State gets that game here in Tallahassee. Florida State has better personnel. I think Florida State will win the game.
What's interesting about that game, though, in theory, is what's the one thing we did over and over last year? It's something we can't do this year, at least to this point. So that game is going to be fundamentally different for a lot of reasons.
Cannot run the counter this year. Ran it to death last year and killed them with it over and over and over again. All right, well, so that game, you know, I still like us, but it's going to be a better game, I think, than it was 45-3 last year. Goodness gracious. And then secondarily, I think that Florida is obviously a work in progress. I hate their quarterback. I don't think Mertz can play. He's average at best on his best day. They're typically fairly physical, and we saw last year that Florida State was a much better team than Florida, but what was happening in that game? Well, we couldn't cover them, and that game, if Jordan's not Superman, we lose that game at home.
Yeah.
And we were
Yep.
much better than that team.
And they ran the ball on us. They ran the ball on Georgia
right
pretty well,
up
actually.
Our gut. So,
Yeah, yeah.
again, I would just point out that just because that's not a great version of our rival, it doesn't mean that when we're on the road this year for that game,
Yeah,
they'll be
yeah.
sky high for that
Well,
game. They
and-
want to ruin our season. I just think it could be a little more competitive than people realize.
That's the other thing about how last year finished. You know, we snuck up on a few teams last season. And they didn't know that we had the kind of punch that we did offensively because we hadn't proven it. We hadn't
Right,
proven it, especially
right.
in the air. Like people are like, I don't buy it. So I think a couple of teams on our schedule the back half last year might have taken us lightly. But by the time you get to a rivalry game against Florida, you see it. Like they had just lost to Vandy the week before.
Yeah, they had.
But they came out and they played inspired
Couldn't
because
win.
they knew if they didn't, we were going to do some things to them that they didn't like very much.
Well, and that,
Same thing with Oklahoma with a bunch of backups.
and they got tired of hearing about how they were going to get blown out.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The target was on our back by the end of the year in the way it used to be. You know, in 2013 and 2014, and now every single game we play, like today, you might not have seen Kyron Drones complete consistently passes between 15 and 30 yards down the field. You might today because he knows that he's playing a top 5 team and there are more eyeballs on the sets. When you are as good or as highly ranked, whatever you want to say it, as Florida State is right now, you get the best of what everybody's got. So you can look at the previous games. You can look what they've done previously, like Syracuse next week. A lot of those previews will be, yeesh, they started out well against nobodies, and then I'm not so sure after that. You're going to get the best they got. So there's a maturity that comes with that, and that's why some of these games might be a little closer than we expect, but you've got to put them down early. This is the other thing. If you're this talented, and that 2013 team was so good at this, by the end of the first quarter, the opponent knew, oh, never mind. I thought I might, but I got nothing for these guys.
Your better teams put down upstart teams and hungry teams and teams looking to pull an upset early.
Yeah.
You know, you make a statement early. You execute early. You're almost businesslike. They're going to be emotional. You can be some. Yeah. Now, listen, there's a difference between intensity and
Right.
emotion. You have to match intensity always. Football is a very intense game.
They're emotional. You are inevitable. You know?
And you have to really just be steady in execution and do what you can do with the better athlete that you have. If you do that, that takes emotion out of the element. So it's no longer part of the game. Now Virginia Tech or whomever the underdog team is that we're speaking of, it's a formality. Now they recognize, well, we can be as emotional as we want to be. We're not as fast, we're not as big, we're not as strong, and they're executing better, so it's going to be a long afternoon. But when you allow an emotional team who wants to believe to hang in there and have hope, if you give them a spark of hope, see Boston College.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you've got
And that
a
was
problem.
after halftime,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, you just fooled around a little bit. Your offense deadened, and the next thing you know, it's 31-17. And it's 31-24. And now you're sitting there going, okay, we got a problem on our hands.
Well, that's the other thing. The lesson from Boston College is that even if you started quick, which it would be nice to see because there hasn't been a whole lot of that this season through 4 games yet, but even if you start well or you go on a 28-0 run before halftime or 28-3 run, the job is not finished. That's the lesson of Boston College. I know weird stuff happened, guys. You got to scoop and score off a fumble. We have the ball. You muff a squib kick. Those are 2 ridiculous things, but sometimes only one of those needs to happen, and then you're in a fight again. So when you put somebody down, remind them again and again and again.
You can do that in the running game. You can especially lean on people in the run game, and that is the most emasculating of all the things in football that can happen to a defense is to get run on. It's a physical aspect of the game that really is at its root what the game is about. And you look at the Ali kid for Marshall against Virginia Tech this year. He had 27 carries for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. Marshall won that game, obviously, beat Virginia Tech 24-17. You go to the Rutgers result for Virginia Tech. And again, we're not talking about, I know there's been a change of quarterback. I'm talking about, at this point, I'm talking about Virginia Tech's defense, which has not been good. And that game, once again, showcasing that, look, this is not a good defense. And they give up the run. In fact, they gave up a ton of rushing yardage. It was 256 yards on the ground to Rutgers. And I remember the number being pretty big. But in that game, the Monongah kid had 16 carries for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. Opposing backs, RB1 for the opposing team against Virginia Tech, has had their way. Trey Benson is better than the 2 guys I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Florida State's a better team than the 2 teams I just mentioned. It's easy to say that they're better than Rutgers and Marshall. If they don't run the ball today, I'm going to be concerned. But I think they will have success running.
I agree. Yeah, that's 7.5 yards per carry for Rutgers, and that includes in college, statisticians sack yardage.
Right.
So they're probably over 8 a carry. The thing is, I agree with you. We should be able to run the ball kind of no matter what today, but I do want to see what Virginia Tech's approach is. Do other teams look at the Clemson approach, which is, I know, sounds backwards. They've got 2 amazing targets on the outside, but Jordan's not all that accurate right now. So I'm going to challenge the run and force him to make throws to the outside, or to be disciplined enough to do something he hasn't done this year, which is to throw the ball underneath. And maybe I'm going to come up and try and stop the run and sell out to do that initially. But if you can hit on some plays early, then you open it up. It's all about getting a good start. And it would be nice, for Florida State in the first quarter to get something more like 3 possessions than just 1. There's an urgency that
teams
you feel.
Teams have done a good job keeping this offense off the field.
That's where the defense could come in and help.
The onus now is on Adam Fuller's group to get off the field on 3rd down. I mean, how many of us have been watching a game screaming at the television, all right, 3rd and long, get off the field? We've had to watch that over and over and over again, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 9, and you're watching these conversions. The problem is, even if you get stops eventually on that drive, that's 1 fewer possession for your offense. You've now allowed the game to be shortened.
Yeah.
And when you shorten games like this, the better team obviously finds themselves in a dogfight in the 4th quarter that they shouldn't otherwise have been in. So getting off the field is very important. I always equate that 3rd down situation, especially 3rd and long, to a little bit like a defense behind a pitcher booting a routine ball.
Yeah.
Now, you may get out of that inning without giving up a run. In fact, the next pitch could be the out you were looking for. But every stressful pitch that your pitcher has to make extra above and beyond the 27 outs that they're required to get is a wear and tear factor that you didn't count on because you can't blow routine plays. Wow. Next thing you know, it's 18 pitches more than you needed to throw, and you're out of the game in the 5th inning instead of the 6th inning. So this is the situation our defense has put our offense in at times.
We're in that time of year, too, with October where that matters greatly. Like, if I'm the Phillies today, my approach is
pick up the ball.
The sooner I can get Strider out of the game, the better.
Right.
What do I have to do to work at bats? And for Florida State here, there's a 3rd down that brought a tear to my eye against Clemson last week. It's in the 4th quarter. We get the stop. It's just before the drive that stalls because they don't decide to call pass interference on Keon Coleman. But we get the stop there near midfield. You get him into a 3rd and 12. It starts with a nice play by Renardo Green, a tackle in the backfield against Will Shipley. They're in 3rd and 12. We bring the house. It's a quick slant.
Yeah.
It's a catch.
Yeah.
Renardo rallies to his man, makes the tackle. It's 4th and 4. It's outside of the go zone.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you're thinking about going for it on 4th, it's outside the go zone, and you rally and you make the play. That brought a tear to my eye because how many times this year have we seen we're playing back, we're going to rally to the ball, we're going to pass off here, linebackers go this way, Red Sea parts open, there's Castellanos, oh my goodness, 25, 30 yards. Get downhill, play aggressive on 3rd down. I would rather lose that way than this death by paper cuts thing. When your offense isn't good, all right, I get it. You want to shorten the game yourself. Force 15-play drives. If Virginia Tech scores on a 3-play drive early in the game, that's not great. But I'd rather it be that than a 13-play drive that goes 6.5, 7 minutes.
Yeah, more possessions, not less possessions. We keep saying that is true, and I think that's where aggression across the board comes into play. Kevin, thank you, by the way. Thanks for the register sausage today, Tom. Yay, sausage. You guys have made the trip from South Carolina worthwhile.
Kevin and son.
That's right. Why is the depth chart never fully accurate? They don't want it to be.
That's true.
They don't want it to be. That's exactly the answer.
It's a little inside baseball
it's
there.
It's a little bit like Bill Belichick in New England. He's always going to have an inaccurate depth chart and or injury report. They're just going to...
It's the injuries in college. The depth chart, oddly, they were telling the truth when they said Kyle Morlock would play more than Marquise and Douglas.
But lately it hasn't been the case because other guys have gotten some reps that weren't even on the list.
Oh, sure.
So it's interesting that they kind of have set it and forget it these days with that depth chart right now at FSU.
Yeah.
I mean, like, a guy will play 2 plays and he's still the guy the next week on the depth chart. You're
I think Pokey Wilson's on the depth chart right now.
So it has been kind of interesting to watch the way that they handle that. But coaches will deceive. It's not their first priority. They don't really care if we're comfortable
Transparency is not their first priority?
No, it's absolutely not. So that's one of the reasons that depth chart is not always accurate, and it seems to just kind of carry over from week to week. But that said, whoever's playing today will have had extra rest, and I think we should look a lot faster today as well. That's an element that we didn't talk about. They should be quick today.
There are some teams when they play aggressive and downhill, they can't. You're like, it takes too long to develop. You have poor technique, poor fundamentals. Your leverage is incorrect. Whatever it is, like you know what, guys? The Mark Stoops approach is the way to go. Let's play back too high, man to man. But this team likes to play downhill. That's the other part of it. That the
You're playing into
linebackers
their
have
strength,
fun
yeah.
when they're getting downhill. The corners are very aggressive to the flats when it's a quick bubble screen look. I mean, that's the play for the defense outside of the Deloge fumble return. That's the play of overtime. That's one of the plays of the game for the defense. It's a 3rd and short. It's a bad decision by the quarterback, but he could have made a bad decision and they still get the first down.
Right.
Renardo has to rally and make that play. They like getting downhill. It is in their nature to do so. I hope that they're allowed to do that a little bit more, and I hope today against a mobile quarterback that the front 4 is allowed to, because they were not against Boston College for a large swath of that game.
But again, I think we know there were some other elements at play in that Boston College game. Primarily, this was a team that was exhausted and sick. And yes,
Yeah.
they were worried about his legs, but I also think they were awfully
Come on,
tired.
man.
That was very, very frustrating. All right, we'll take a quick break. Before we do, let me get you caught up on the top 25 scoreboard once again for those that are not near it. Texas has taken a lead on Oklahoma 14-10 in the second quarter, about 9 minutes to play in the half there. Maryland still on top of Ohio State. Now 10-7, however, 10-7 in the second quarter there. Missouri had an opportunity to maybe push this thing to a number that LSU couldn't catch. They did not, and instead LSU came down and kicked a field goal. So it's 22-10 now, LSU with the ball and driving. Later today, Washington State and UCLA, Alabama, Texas A&M should be a good one. It's a sneaky, awesome week of college football with a lot of important games. And by the way, as I give these scores and talk about the schedule, this is one of those years because it's not a 12-team playoff, it's a 4-team playoff. These games, the Alabama A&M game, the UCLA-Washington State game, oddly the Kentucky-Georgia game, the North Carolina-Syracuse game, our game here this afternoon, all play a part in the grand beauty contest. It's not just the wins and losses, it's how you look, because you're going to have 10 to 12 teams that are vying for the same 4 spots. I have a sense that there are going to be several 11-1 teams, or perhaps even a couple 10-2 teams that will have a shot at it. And so you're going to want to make sure that you don't just win, you take care of business and you look good doing it. That's why we're pressing so much on these issues when you talk about these games. Like, how do you look when you win matters.
Weird stuff is in the air this season in college football for all these power teams. Nobody is impervious to a situation like this where you're in the second half and Auburn's up on Georgia and you're going, oh my goodness, or Maryland. Every week there's going to be something like this. Every week. And you just hope. I know people hate the golf analogy, so I'll use a drive-in one. Some trips you go on, it can be on the interstate to Atlanta or whatever, or sometimes it's a commute coming home. And there's just so many dangerous things that happen. You're like, I don't know what's in the air today. But when you get to the driveway, you go, okay.
Made it.
That was intense. I did not expect that drive to go that way, but we made it. Every time you can get into the locker room, there's a win in the books, and you see all this
healthy.
And everybody's healthy. There's all this weird stuff going on elsewhere. You're like, whew, okay.
Survived another week.
It's not us today.
It feels like a giant NCAA basketball tournament right now. Survive in advance, although you do want to look good doing it if possible. Notre Dame-Louisville tonight is a sneaky, intriguing game at 7:30. You need Louisville at some point to lose a football game. They're 5-0. And, at this point, Notre Dame obviously has a loss.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if Notre Dame knocks off Louisville, then the path is completely clear at that point for Florida State. I mean, Louisville's schedule is weak.
It is. They've got Miami, and I think they play Duke soon. So I don't think, they'll have Duke will have its quarterback at full strength. He might play, but he might not be at full strength. So, yeah, the more that Louisville loses, the better it is for us. We have the inside track. We've earned the inside track by going 4-0, beating Clemson on the road. This is nice to be back home. They played really well at home for the most part last year. So get a little momentum going. You turn in the next week, opponents like Virginia Tech and Syracuse into 2 easy wins. If you can do it, and this is what you should do, so do what you should.
Yeah, take care of business.
Get ready for Duke, and then there's a push after that.
Touchdown LSU. It's now 22-17 LSU in Missouri. This figures to be a shootout. If you have the over, you're feeling pretty good as they get set to head into halftime. It is Warchant Game Day. We are live. Hotel Indigo. Back for more in a moment.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from 5-star Irish Hotel, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas wall, featuring 560 inches of flat screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold, 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today.
A longtime supporter of Warchant.com programming and Florida State athletics, DeLuna Coffee proudly presents you the Warchant Gameday Postgame Call-In Show. FSU alumni owned and operated. DeLuna Coffee's Ed and Brett Lemmix have a combined 30 years of experience in the coffee industry. DeLuna Coffee's claim to fame is their Blue Angels blend, known as the first ever food or beverage item to be licensed by a military branch. A percentage of proceeds from the Blue Angels blend, Midnight Shift, and High Noon Lawman's blend go to the U.S. Navy Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Program, the Raleigh Foundation of Pensacola, and the Escambia County Sheriff's Foundation, respectively. For a limited time only, DeLuna Coffee's Voodoo Dark Espresso Blend is buy one, get one free. Head over to DeLunaCoffee.com to check out that deal, as well as the Warchant Pick Your Poison Bundle. From west of I-4 all the way through the Florida Panhandle, look for DeLuna Coffee in your local Publix in the Florida Locals section. You can also always head to DeLunaCoffee.com today.
Warchant Game Day continues now from Hotel Indigo, where we are set up perfectly every home game. If you didn't know, we're here each and every home game. A few hours before kickoff, we set up shop and do the pregame show on the roof here, floor number 7. Lot filling up over there to our right.
Slowly filling up, man. Parents' weekend traffic is always a disaster.
Yeah, it was a disaster on the way here.
It was.
It was. But Doak Campbell will be a great place to be today. Should be perfect weather at kickoff for Florida State and Virginia Tech. We got a question here in the chat while we were away, and I like the question. It's from Sky Ninja FSU.
Sky Ninja.
If Robert Scott is 80%, do you play him today? Probably not. No. I think
it's a good question.
It is, and I would say no because the nature of Robert Scott's situation is one where you got to be very careful. And I think you're going to hold him out until you can get him 100% healthy. You ought to be able to beat Virginia Tech without the services of Robert Scott today. If not, you've got bigger problems than whether or not Robert Scott's healthy.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I think you would hold him out if he's only at 80%, because you look down the stretch, and Florida State's schedule is such that they're going to be favored in every game they play from this point forward. And the beauty of going undefeated through your first 4 games is you gave yourself that little bit of a wiggle room. And now you kind of can exhale a little bit. Nobody you face, whether that is Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and I dare say even Duke, although Duke's defense is very good, none of them are going to have the athleticism, speed, depth, size that Clemson had. So you're going to be favored in all these games. You're going to be favored against Wake and certainly going to be favored big on the road against Pitt. For Robert Scott, I think you really kind of go down the stretch here. You'd say, can I get him back by the time we play Duke?
Yeah.
Now, listen, if he's 100% today, you play him, of course.
I'd like him to play before that game.
Like
but yeah,
Syracuse game, sure, if you can. But ideally, if you're thinking about the stretch run, these 2 weeks, Virginia Tech and Syracuse, those are 2 teams that lack athleticism. Yep. You ought to be able to win these games as currently constructed, whether or not Robert Scott plays. If you do, obviously, then you get set against a really good defensive team in Duke. We'll see if they have their quarterback back by then. But Elko's a good coach. He'll have that defense ready to play. You'd like to have Robert Scott by then. Then you want to go on the road and play Wake Forest. Mention the Pitt game. You should be all right there. But you got Miami and, of course, the University of Florida at the end of the year. So you got to have your horses for those rivalry games. Those are always, by definition, intense games. You'd like to have your starters out there for all the biggest games. So you just got to get him back in time for this stretch run when you're trying to go undefeated, you're trying to play for an ACC title, trying to get to the college football playoff. You need all your guys. You don't need him today against Virginia Tech. So if Robert Scott's even, 80,
if he
85%,
could, if he could worsen his situation by playing.
I wouldn't play him. Yeah, I wouldn't play him.
I'm starting to feel the juices now that, we're within 2 hours of kickoff because I'm just so fascinated. Last year when we played, even in the 3-game stretch that, you didn't win against ranked opponents, you knew that we were going to show up and we were going to run the ball. You just knew that. Now, the Clemson game was weird because we thought it was going to be gap schemes, but we ran outside zone and we were very successful. It was like, wow, how about that? You could do that too? I don't know that we can line up and run the ball week to week. You got to show me. You got to prove it. And I want to know with the coaching staff, and this is the lead for me, 100%, what do you believe you are? What did the film tell you? What did your self-scout? The moments where maybe you had an uncomfortable conversation with another coach, maybe it's Mike and Alex Atkins, and they have to get real for a minute about what they are and what they're not. Like, Alex, can these guys do this? Or what else should we do instead? Like, what path have you chosen? And if Virginia Tech plays it straight up today, we'll get some of those answers. If they decide to play way back, then maybe, we don't get all the answers that we would get if they played normally and played it honest. But I just want to see what our base is going to be. What are we defining ourselves as? Because it has to be different than the first 4 games. I think we all agree on that. It can't be that, it's just jump ball city. There's got to be more substance to it. And how do they define what that substance is?
Island Chief asked the question, are there more questions on offense today or defense that'll be answered? I think it's great. To me, it's fun. I love the test. Tom's going to say defense for sure.
Ooh.
I think you are, because you talked about discipline. You talked about the need to not fall for some of the silliness in the backfield. They haven't always shown, especially at linebacker, that they can be that kind of discipline. So I would side with that side of it.
Which is crazy because you loved linebackers all off season long. You said we were elite there.
I'll tell you, man, I'll give our 2 starting linebackers credit. They've played pretty well.
Yes, physical.
They've been physical, but there's not much depth there. I wonder if Blake Nicholson gets out there today. He's been really coming on strong as a linebacker in camp. He was very good, but he was undersized. He's gotten bigger. This weight program and this nutrition program for him has really seen him turn a corner. I give Josh Storms a ton of credit. When Blake Nicholson got here, he's a true freshman from California, came in at linebacker. We got to look at him right away and said, well, he's got talent.
And the frame.
You can see he's got the frame and speed, but he's undersized. So I thought, like most freshmen.
Looked like a strong safety.
Yeah. And like most freshmen, and by the way, he played both ways in high school. He was an offensive player and a defensive player. He's just an athlete. When he got here, I thought, he's a year away. Just, that's fine. Most freshmen are, especially at linebacker. It's tough to play as a freshman. But then he got into this weight program, and I got to give them credit. You could see week to week when we go to practice, I'm like, he's getting bigger. Most guys lose weight during the season. It's hard to sustain your weight during the season. He got bigger, so clearly being introduced to Josh Storm's program, the nutrition program, really saw him take off. And he's now put on, I'd be willing to guess, 7 to 10 pounds. He looks physically a little bit more like the part. Here's the thing about him. He can cover.
That's it. Yep.
He can really cover. And that's a weakness of our linebacking unit. So you got a guy that may be an answer. If he knows the scheme, if he knows what he's doing, do you trust him? Today would be a great day if you take care of business and get out to a big lead. To get guys like that on the field. There's no replicating game reps. You can try it. You can talk about situational football in practice. You can try to imitate what they'll see in a game, but it's not the same. Running out onto that football field in front of these fans, a stadium of this magnitude, in a game where the results matter. If you make a mistake at practice when they're trying to imitate something, it doesn't really matter. You learn from it. Coach yells at you. You get another rep. In a game, it could be 7 points.
Yeah.
You could lose. You could be in a position where you put your team in a bad position. So they're not going to put him out there if they don't think he's ready and understanding of the scheme and how to communicate. But if he is, buddy, I think that's a player for your future. I'm really excited to watch him play. I hope he gets out there today. The only way that happens is if your offensive players and your defensive players that are starters take care of business against an outmatched team.
Yeah, agreed. I would say even from the beginning, they do the newcomer interviews when kids get on campus, and it's Another thing that's just refreshing about the media policy under this head coach
Yeah.
is that you get to talk to freshmen. And so you create that baseline and you see how far they come. It's not just the strength room. It's not just development on the field, but it's also as they communicate and how do they define who they were when they got here versus when they're a third-year player or a fourth-year player. But Blake was asked about what's a really important thing about what you do and what you need to do. And he said cover. It's the modern game. I know I'm a linebacker, but it's about being able to cover in space. And if he can prove to be apt and he could prove to be trustworthy as a true freshman, he doesn't have to be in the rotation as the third man. But if it's second in passing because of a holding penalty on the offense or third in passing, and you can roll him out there for 8 to 12 plays a game.
Yeah, and trust that he's going to cover, yeah.
Think about this is one of the larger losses for this team in the offseason to the transfer portal, like the outgoing market, the export market, was Brendan Gant, I thought. Brendan Gant would have been a very nice piece to have in this rotation at linebacker because of his coverage skills. And Blake Nicholson might be
a former safety, so it made a lot of sense. Yeah,
exactly. But it's just in certain situations they've rotated a lot of different guys. I don't think they love all their options. I don't think we do either. But
got to get better there. By the way,
coverage matters in this day and age of college football. And this kid, that's one of the primary things he does, which makes him, I think, all the more valuable all the sooner because the two guys you have are larger bodies like Tatum.
Yeah, I think you're going to see him at some point here. And I will tell you, big picture-wise, moving forward, as this program seeks to operate at peak efficiency, as I like to say, and becomes a national title contender annually, you've got to see an uptick in linebacker recruiting.
Yeah.
That's got to get better.
Yeah.
Randy Shannon has failed us in that regard, and they have got to get better at this. So,
look at what Clemson was last 2 weeks ago.
Two different worlds, buddy, watching their linebackers. So that is an area that they have got to find a way to get better. I think they will. Lee writes, great show, guys. If Virginia Tech keeps it on the ground today. Oh, by the way, Lee, they will. Do you still see the opportunity for sacks? And if so, who's your sack leader? Well, I mean, listen, the quarterback's going to want to run around because that's what he does, and that's what they're going to incorporate because he's a battering ram. He's 230 pounds. But he only completed 12 passes last week.
Yeah.
So they're not going to throw it a ton.
They'll take their shots downfield.
Yeah. So by definition, I don't think there are a lot of opportunities to sack the quarterback today. Some, but I don't think a lot. Unless we get up big early and then they're forced to throw and, it turns into a mess.
He doesn't handle pressure very well either.
No.
Yeah.
So I would say I would always end up taking Verse as my sack leader if I had a choice to pick off this group. There's this misconception or perception that Jared Verse isn't playing well this year. He is. He's played well. He's been in the backfield. He leads the team in tackles for loss. He's a guy that I think opposing offenses are well aware of where he is at all times.
Yeah, he's still doing it, too, with the extra attention he's getting.
Yeah, their chip and all that. No, he is not compiling a ton of sacks. And so when you look at the stats and you're like, 1 sack or a half a sack or whatever he's got, they think that he's not playing well. He has played well. There's more to the position than just whether or not you sack the quarterback. Do you reset the line of scrimmage? Do you set the edge? Are you able to do those things? And he has been really good at that so far this year. He also plays physical. He's a sideline-to-sideline guy.
Yep.
The numbers will get there when we face more passing attacks and when teams are forced to play us a little bit more honest. So we'll see.
I think but today, tackles for loss, you can rack up a ton of those today. And they work just as well, man. A loss is a
doesn't
loss.
matter if it's a sack or a tackle for loss,
because a lot of their running plays require options and gadgets. They'll run reverses today. They had a flea flicker last week against Pitt. You're breaking out tricks against Pitt. What are you going to do against us today? But a lot of it has pre-snap motion and all kinds of long developing things in the backfield where there's a read defender, an unblocked man that they're reading. But the unblocked man might be part of your scheme on offense, but if we just went up front while you're doing the reading, you're going to get hit, and you're going to get hit hard. It's one of the things that drove us nuts about Wake Forest all those years is we didn't have a defensive line that could force them to make a decision quicker.
Yeah, the mesh
getting owned.
7 seconds. It got old
because we couldn't generate an interior pressure, and that was killer for us. But today, this defensive line should eat against that offensive line, and if they want long developing option plays in the backfield, we should win in those situations, and so we should rack up tackles for loss, but not necessarily sacks.
You know, it's a good point that you bring up that Wake Forest game and you think about those years where we could not get pressure on the quarterback and how frustrating that was. I do think this is a front four that absolutely solves that problem. They've been the best part of the defense so far, is the front four. Robert writes, given the opponents, how much experimenting should the staff be doing these next 2 games? Any wholesale/schematic changes or just slight tinkering? while still respecting two Power 5 opponents. Yeah, it's interesting. Almost
It's a fine line.
Yeah, it is a very fine line. And to be sure, coaches do this. If you have opportunities to face an outmatched opponent and perhaps kind of work on some things, you will take that opportunity. But I will say I don't know that Florida State's in a position to do that right now. And it's frustrating. That's part of my frustration, even though they're 4-0, even though they've taken care of business. Because they haven't been able to sustain success at any one thing, because they haven't run the ball successfully, because they're too frequently in third and fourth down, which means you're losing first down.
Yeah.
Because of all
Always.
of those things, okay, I don't know that you're afforded the luxury to work on something. I think you've got to figure out what you are before you start working on something and what you can do before you start working on something. Now, I guess we could get into semantics here, and you could say, well, isn't that working on something? Well, no, you come in with a game plan. You have an idea of what you want to do. And then you only adjust off of that if they force you to adjust off of that.
Yes.
Not everybody does, and so you can stick with the game plan. The only experimentation that I think could happen today would be if Florida State is up huge at halftime and you come out in the second half and have an opportunity to, quote-unquote, work on things without ever putting yourself in danger of seeing this tighten up and become a close game. In short, what I'm saying is they just haven't been good enough to experiment or tinker. They haven't been good enough to put themselves in a situation where they're afforded the luxury to do that.
No, agreed. And I think tinkering comes after you define what your base is and what you are. It's not just about necessarily the result and controlling the result. It's also, well, I know I can run counter. I know I can run that every play if I want to. See Miami last year. But what can I run off of that?
We did run it on every play.
Well,
it was awesome.
but what's our base play? What's our base play this year? What's our base identity? What are we? We don't know yet.
We do not know.
Other than jump balls.
That's the point
what
I've been
are
making. We haven't known since day one. We didn't know in the LSU game.
Right.
In spite of a lopsided victory against a ranked team, top 5 team, in a neutral site game, but, I mean, they dominated that second half, and we thought we came out of there like, oh, man, too many weapons. Defenses are going to be floundering against us. What are they going to do? And now here we sit here today going, I don't know what we are.
Well, defensively, though, I think you might be able to tinker sooner with the defense because you can define what you are by creating pressures early in the game, by being more aggressive early in the game. You know, I thought after the Boston College example, and you see by the end of the day, they're pressuring Castellanos to bring in the house, and they're having a
they
lot
had
more
no
success.
choice at that point. They sped him up.
Well, you would think that when you come out the gates against Clemson, different opponent, different set of parameters, I get it. Shipley, Maffa, better receivers, they're better across the board than Boston College. You would still think that the lesson would have been learned that you're going to be aggressive in that situation out the gate, and they weren't. So now that we've had 2 of these,
there's no reason not to be now.
can we not have strike 3 here? Can we, against Virginia Tech, come out? You don't have to blitz every play either, but you just play a little bit more aggressively instead of this back passing off soft stuff. Like Adam Fuller was saying, what he was mad about when they were playing some zone coverages against Clemson was just because you're in zone doesn't mean that you can't be aggressive and get up on the guy. Well, okay, that's fair, but at what point do you say, maybe my guys can't this year? Maybe we are not equipped to do so.
What, this year? What about last year?
Well,
and the year
come
before?
on.
No, I'm serious. Like, what are we doing here? We can't teach it.
Yeah.
By the way, Oklahoma, Texas, 17-17, second quarter. What a great game there. Maryland, Ohio State tied at 10. They're going into halftime, 10-10 in that game. Man, these early games are shaping up to be doozies. Missouri, LSU, 25-17. That game is in the second quarter.
Like when weird
that game
stuff,
is at halftime now.
I don't like when weird stuff's in the air. It's contagious on college football.
It feels that
Saturday.
way sometimes, but that's what you got. These are top 25 teams anyhow, and you got 17-17, 10-10, and 25-17. So you either have ties or one-score games of the teams that are playing right now in the top 25. It is. It makes you nervous, doesn't it, Tommy? You start looking around, you're like, Boston College, by the way, leads Army 13-9. Yeah, they're really struggling with Castellanos too, aren't they? Yeah. So there you go.
Right.
I mean,
well, it's the BC game. That's it. You know, if the BC game is you go on the 28-0 run, 23 run, whatever it is, and you continue that into the second half, and it's a 4-score win, we're not talking the way we are. But it's that thing that hovers over us. It's not the Clemson game. Like, if you took care of business against Boston College, and then the Clemson game was exactly the same.
you'd be like, hey, they found a way to win on the road in an important game, all of that. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's the trend of the back-to-back weeks there where you go, guys.
5.5 quarters where you just go, okay, man, I'd like to see something.
Can we get those backups in again in the second half? Would be nice.
Well, and it's funny because this has been the balancing act for us as, analysts and talking about this team. You will willingly accept and understand that There's no way to complain about being 4-0 with a road win in overtime, breaking
Right.
a losing streak to Clemson. There's no way to complain about blowing out LSU in the second half. But yet here we sit going, I can complain. I've got plenty of things. It's just the weirdest start to a season.
We're weird. We are a weird team.
We are a very weird team, but I think we have a chance to not be. I think we have a chance to be consistent. And that's, I want to be boring. I want people to be like, well, Florida State's going to kick the hell out of so-and-so today because that's just what they do.
Honey, give me the remote. We're putting something else on.
I want
I know what's going on here.
I want opposing fans to come into Doak and be like, we should leave. This is a beating.
Well, it was Mary and her husband from NC State.
NC State that
35 to
year.
nothing
In the first quarter.
He's
like, God, I
Get in the
drove
car,
all this
Mary.
again. I'm done watching this. Warchant Game Day continues. We're at Hotel Indigo up on the roof overlooking Doak Campbell Stadium.
Lots
where
are
it's
full now.
Glorious. Yeah, lots are filling up big time now. Great food, great people, cold drinks. Come on over if you're walking about and you're listening to us. Swing on in and say hello. Warchant Game Day continues in a moment.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from five-star Irish Hotel, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold, 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today.
Picture this. Saturday morning, November the 4th, 9 a.m. Game day's on your TV, and FSU has dismantled their ACC schedule to this point. They're 8-0. Kirk, Reese, McAfee, and Desmond are debating whether the Noles are going to be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the playoff, and JT13 is the front man for the Heisman. Life's pretty good, and guess what? It's going to get better, because your DeLuna Coffee Warchant bundle came in the mail yesterday. You tell your wife, I'm not superstitious, as you pour your DeLuna Voodoo Coffee blend into your new stainless steel tumbler. You add a scoop of cocoa to die for from DeLuna, and mutter a curse under your breath onto the pit's secondary. No voodoo necessary for that, though. The opponent was doomed from the start. Johnny and Keon, they don't need DeLuna's help to make the opponent's life a living hell. But in honor of the 2023 FSU offense, enjoy the DeLuna Coffee Pick Your Poison bundle. Check the drop-down menu for all available options. Wake up and enjoy DeLuna Coffee today. Head to DeLunaCoffee.com. That's DeLunaCoffee.com.
Game day rolls on. Hotel Indigo. Jermaine writes, September was tough. October will define us. I think that's true, by the way. I think Jermaine's right about that. I think that's why we were so excited.
Yeah, let's kick it off.
We were so excited about this game this week, and it started on Monday for me. Right off the bat, I came in and told you, man, I am really pumped that we're playing football this week. We always need the bye week, both as for our job, and then, of course, the team needs it too, and that's really, what the fans care about. They're not worried about us. But the truth is, like, you usually kind of clear your head and feel good about it, the bye week, and it's nice to not have to worry about football and just watch the other teams play and all that stuff. But really, absence did make the heart grow fonder here. I absolutely, by Sunday morning, was like, okay, I want to see us play.
Well, yeah,
now.
you'd seen
I
enough
wanna
of the other teams.
Yeah, I
And-
want to get back out there.
And the other thing is, there's not a juggernaut out there that's an all-time great Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, where you're
No.
saying, well, everybody's playing for second this year. Everybody's playing for first this year. Everybody
Everybody thinks
There's-
they have a shot,
There's
yeah.
a dozen to 15 teams today that are waking up saying, man, we could be in the playoff. And then if we get to the playoff, look at all these jokers out here. Anything's possible.
Yeah, you
And
play
they're
your
ri-
best game that day, you got a chance.
And you're right to feel that way. This year is a strange year, but we can start to change the tenor of that conversation with a convincing win today. You get the details cleaned up. You do it again next week, and then you watch, because that's just about the time the college football playoff show
The
rolls
talking
out.
points change, Tom.
Boy, oh boy, Florida State's gotten it together, guys. They look like a machine, and you will start to hear that, but you got to go play well and earn it first, and they have not done that to the level of a top 3, top 2 team just yet, I don't think.
No, I don't think they have either. In fact, it's to the point where not only do I think we need to do it, we had a question earlier in today's broadcast, and the question was round robin, Clemson, LSU, Miami. And I said
Yeah.
Clemson definitively.
And Robert was in the chat, so Robert twice
Oh,
today.
That's good to hear. Well, number 2, what I would tell you is that if you said right now, Tom, Clemson, Florida State, and Michigan.
And records don't matter.
Nope,
It's
just right now, we're going to play a round robin. That's a tough one.
It is tough.
You're not so sure you're picking us, are you? I can see
Well,
that look
I'm
on your
eliminating
face.
Michigan is what I'm eliminating. And I know.
Okay.
I'm putting them to the side.
I'll tell you this: the country. Not that it
I'm
matters.
glad we're not playing Clemson again. I don't think there's a path back for them.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. But I guess my point is, I could do that. I can sit here and take 3 teams, include Florida State in those games, and ask our fans if they're being honest with themselves. Of these 3 teams, who do you like? And I could do that with us against Michigan and like I just said, what did I say? Clemson, Michigan,
yeah.
and
Us.
us. And then I could do it with us and say USC and
Texas. You throw USC out, they can't stop anybody.
They can't, but they can score against
Boy,
anybody.
I hope USC and LSU play in a bowl game. That would be 95
Over
to 90.
under 100.
Yeah. 150.
Well, my point is that's how wide open it is. You can play this little game, this little thought exercise, and have fun with it. Grab any 3 top 10 teams right now. Grab Georgia,
Yep.
Florida State, and Alabama.
I feel pretty good about that.
Better, don't you?
Better than the Clemson, Michigan.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, it's a weird year.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's my point, right? So it's fascinating this year of college football. And until you can sit down and play that little game, and you say Florida State more often than not, and you say it with conviction because you believe it, as opposed to wishing or hoping it to be true, the better, obviously, we will all feel. But that only happens when you go out here today and you play well and you take care of an outmatched opponent,
Yep.
whom you're favored to beat by 24.
Yep.
That only happens when you go out there and you do it again next week against Syracuse, who you'll be a double-digit favorite against, and you take care of business and dominate bad teams. Now, remember, last year after the 3-game losing streak, Florida State, we came in on that Monday, and I declared that I thought Florida State would win out. I thought they were better than that 3-game losing streak. I thought they were on the cusp of something good. And I was thinking that they were playing outmatched opponents and that we were ascending and many of them were declining. And that turned out to be true, and Florida State garnered the momentum they had coming into this year because they took care of business and won those games against teams that they should beat. Now they have a similar stretch before them. They survived the early stretch. Now they have a stretch before them where they can do the same thing, where they can step into the arena and dominate some teams, and all of a sudden we're talking about, and this year it's different, because last year you did that off of 3 losses. This year you're doing it while undefeated. Can you do this now? If you do, you're playing for a national title or you're making the college football playoffs, certainly.
Well, everybody needed a chance to exhale for the bye week. You know, even Coach Norvell said, I'm really pleased with where the bye week fell on our calendar. Everybody needed a chance to exhale just to get some rest, get their mind right. But we could exhale in a different way after today if we get the result that you're talking about. Everybody will calm the hell down. You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing the post-game show 10 to 15 minutes after. I think it'll be a much calmer experience without as many calls or questions saying, are we sure that ... Are we sure about ... You win this game today convincingly. I think even the players themselves go, whew, okay. I knew we were good. I'm glad we've proven we're good. We don't have to worry about that thing anymore, whether it's about a clean start, whether it's about consistency for the defense or the ability to run the ball. Like, if we're able to run the ball today, I know Virginia Tech gave up 7.5 yards to Rutgers.
Yes, they did.
I don't care.
Marshall also ran the ball.
If we can run the ball today, and Trey Benson puts up 100 yards on 15 carries, whatever it is, something like, he will exhale, and the confidence returns. I think there's a little bit of a confidence issue going on right now, which is strange to say for a team that's 4-0, but you saw it against Boston College when the world was crumbling around them. They didn't exactly respond in droves.
They were pretty wide-eyed, yeah.
Now, they responded at Clemson, made a play in a key situation, and showed toughness to finish the job, but I'm talking about the flow of the game, the consistency. There looks to be we're timid at times. The running backs are timid at times. We don't fire off the ball on the offensive line. You get confidence going, and then you can't wait to go out there and hit somebody, hit the hole, make the play.
Yeah, when you're playing because you know what your identity is, and you're playing well, and you're playing within that, and you're able to execute like you're talking about, obviously, you can't wait to go play the game.
Yeah.
When you're uncertain and unsure and searching, it looks
like a
that
feeling
way.
out process.
Yeah, you watch it, it seems timid. So that was what was weird to us. Maybe not against Clemson, but I think just kind of weird. You referenced the BC game. That was incredibly odd. Again, I think some strange forces were at play there. I think that was a really sick team, and they had some issues that they were dealing with. And
there
I
were
think
nerves too.
Well, there were
the sickness can foster that, but still.
Well, what I'm saying is when you don't have anything left in the tank and the team's coming all the way back, that is going to elicit nerves. I don't know that we didn't execute because we were nervous. I don't know that we could execute because we had nothing going for us and they were spent.
Sure.
They were hanging on for dear life.
I think we're saying the same thing. I was surprised to see the nerves show up. Like, you're not going to value
It's a weird
the football.
look on Mike's face, wasn't it?
Yes. And that's what I'm saying. He sounded a little bit flustered that Monday morning press conference after Boston College. So in the moment.
Because the warts were showing.
Right. If you're spent, and he said, the one thing he said was, we put some things on film that I wish we hadn't put out there.
Yeah.
Very interesting
He had to
words.
reach deep, didn't he?
Right. If you're in the post game up in Chestnut Hill, you're spent. You're emotionally spent. I grant you. That was a weird game. You were trying to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, but you found a way. Understandable. But then you come back the next Monday, and you look like you're not sure that you have all the answers just yet, still. After looking at the film, guys, I looked at the film, and, given the I wish, and after the season, maybe I'll go into detail about just how sick this team was, what they battled through. I'm so proud of these guys. There were IVs hooked up in the locker room.
If you're able to go back and do that, yeah.
I'll tell you what, guys. Then I looked at the film. It's just a couple of things to clean up. That's not the way he approached that Monday.
Right.
His Monday was more hemming and hawing, like, well, we got to be more consistent.
Well, I think he probably understood that
so he
there
was
were.
Spooked.
Yeah, he was. I don't think he thought the team had that in them. We've done this a lot over the years with basketball. We'll say, "Oh, that's in you." Okay, well now I'm nervous. Yeah, yeah. So that was one of those "that's in you" moments. Like, "Oh man, really? You're capable of this? Oh, that's not good. We didn't think that was possible. How could you possibly have thought that was possible after the LSU game?
Correct.
You would have never guessed that.
Well, which is also why this team is one of the weirder ones we've covered in a long time, because they have the fortitude to go make a play, flip a game on its head against Clemson, and then in overtime, handle business. You call a weird run to Jaheim Bell to start overtime. You're in 2nd and 9.
With Trey Benson as the lead blocker.
You've got the guts to go make the play.
Weird play.
You take the lead, and then you get off the field. You know what I mean? It's a 3rd and short. You rally. Renardo Green makes a play. It's a 4th down. You get a deflection at the line of scrimmage. Guys making plays to go win the game. So on the one hand, they've got the toughness. I mean, real toughness, and they know a lot about themselves. On the other hand, when the world was crumbling against Boston College, a situation like today, it's a game you're massively favored in, they didn't respond all that well.
So the areas today that we'll be hyper-focused on will be first and foremost offensive line.
Yeah.
You're going to start with
Personnel.
the offensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, what's the personnel, offensive line? Do we execute against a team that's been susceptible to the run?
What is the scheme they're asking to run on the ground?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so there's that. You're going to then look at the health of Jordan Travis.
Yes.
That'll be next on your list. Maybe that's first on your list.
Well,
but
in warm-ups, take a look and see if he's got that extra padding on the left side.
Take a look at Jordan Travis's health. Is there a willingness to run when he has opportunities? Heck, do they design plays for him? Are they called runs? Those kinds of things. So you get that, all right? Defensively, are you disciplined? Are you where you're supposed to be? Because we're going to really look at that today now, because if you are, you'll dominate Virginia Tech. If you're not, It'll lead to big plays.
Long
the kid will have a
drives.
long day
Yeah.
running the football, and
Yeah.
now you're going to get into the second half of a game that's very difficult. So they got some key things to we'll be watching very closely. I think the fan base will be watching very closely. I think Mike Norvell will be watching very closely. Like, can we do these things? And now the health of Jordan Travis, they already know. We don't know. That's different. But the other two things, they're going to be watching very closely. And Adam Fuller needs his group to get off to a good start because we can really praise Adam, I think, for the adjustments in game. He's done a great job this year, adjustments in game. But you're having to make these adjustments because of the way the games are starting and how poorly you're doing in terms of letting. I mean, think about what they've let opposing quarterbacks do. The answer is get comfortable quick.
Right.
So,
I think Corey said it, layups, for Boston College. That's what he called it. These are breakdowns where that's not even football. It's one against none. And it's not because, we're giving something away on a blitz. It's because you can't communicate. You can't bother to communicate and be in the right place so somebody is scot-free. Or you can't bother to communicate or play your assignment, and so you allow for a 3rd and 12 to turn into a 30-yard run? That's not even football. What the hell is that? So that's what you're trying to clean up today. You're trying to get better in that regard, but I think that's all fostered by aggression, an attacking mindset. Personnel on the defense does matter, too. Akeem Dent is going to be a guy that you're looking for. And if it's not, and it's Kevin Noles again, against an opponent like this, where there's a lot of stuff, trickeration in the backfield, can you trigger downhill, make a tackle when you're in a position to make a tackle? We'll see. But I think it all starts with personnel decisions and health, and then that sets the tone for some of the things that we find out moving forward. The good thing is we're harping on the critical parts, and there are a lot of things to be critical about. But we are 4-0. Every one of our goals, preseason-wise, is in front of us. You have an opportunity, the inside track to Charlotte to play for the ACC championship and by extension going to the college football playoff. Before the year started, I think we said if we went 3-1 and we were sitting here on Tallahassee Game Day, Warchant Gameday at Hotel Indigo, we'd be happy with that because your goals are still in front of you. You're 4-0. This is a good place to be. I'd rather be cleaning up mistakes and having issues at 4-0 than 3-1 because now with this resume and what LSU's doing, if they're 3-1 with a win over LSU and a loss to Clemson, I don't know that there's a path.
Yeah, so by the way, this is actually why we hyper-focus on some of the things we're not doing well, because the opportunity is there. It's all right there before you. You did survive it. You are 4-0. Now get right. Think about how cool it is to know the floor has been raised dramatically, where you can play a B game, a C game, and still beat an LSU, and still beat a Clemson, who I mean, again, we both think Clemson's very good. And I think Clemson will go on to have a very good year. So maybe not by their standards, and their fans can be mad if they want to be. That's fine.
Good.
They can deal with us.
Be mad.
But if they
cause
go
infighting.
Yeah, fine. If they go 9-3, 10-2, they'll look at that as a disappointment. But think about it. When you start like they did, 2-2, that would be a hell of a run.
Yeah.
So I think we think they have one of the best defenses in the country. The point would be we won the game. We found a way to win the game.
Yep.
And now
it's a very NFL result. You're like, I don't care how, just get it done.
Well, now you know, though, how much better your team is than it was just 2 years ago because you haven't played great and you're 4-0. And now you know that the bar has been raised to a point where these two knuckleheads can sit up here and complain about being 4-0 and all the things that we don't like.
I'm not complaining about being 4-0.
No, complaining about the aspects of how we got there. And that's fine. That's a good place to be. I did this back in 98, 99, 2000, 2001. I would come in every day on the air and talk about the undefeated team that I was disgusted with. And so, that's a fun show to do. That's a fun place to be at. That's where you're talking about a standard being way up here. One dare says an unreasonable standard. That's fun. That's where you want to get to. You want to get to a standard where people look at you and laugh like we do Alabama fans, where they're saying crazy things after an 11-2 season, where they're like, I think Nick's losing it. You lost by a field goal against Tennessee at night with 300,000 people.
Look at it. I think he's ill. I think he is ill.
So that's what I mean. Like, you want to get back to complaining about ridiculous things. So, but we're a long way from that, too. So that growth is very real. And
the last time he wore striped Bama polos 3 times in a row was his first year. We lost all kinds of games. Somebody needs to tell
Monroe, by the way.
Just wear the solid crimson.
So we got 20-17 Oklahoma and Texas, by the way. That is a war. And Maryland and Ohio State are at halftime tied at 10 as well. 25-17. They're in the third quarter. Missouri
That's an
and
unwatchable
LSU.
war is what that is. Don't put your screen at home, if you're watching TV right now on Maryland, Ohio State, ugly. Put it on Oklahoma, Texas. That's a game.
Well, that's a great game. Yeah, that's a really good game right now. LSU, Missouri, 25-17, 11:27 to play in the third. All the rest of the top 25 action starts at 3:30 or later, and that's what we'll be. We'll take a real quick break here and come back and get cruising on here. Nearly done with Warchant Game Day. Any more questions, make sure you get them in the chat. We're at Hotel Indigo. Great place to be. The food's good. The weather is gorgeous. The setting, the backdrop couldn't be better. Come on out and join us if you still have time and you want to swing on in here, get you some
incredible
food.
view,
And cool.
too,
Yeah,
man.
it's good times. Warchant Game Day continues in a moment.
The finest football program in the state and rolling into 2023 with a Heisman contender. Stay connected with everything Florida State over at the ultimate Seminole sports source, Warchant.com. Expert insight from five-star Ira Schofel, the wit and perspective of FSU encyclopedia Corey Clark, the latest on FSU recruiting with entrenched reporter Michael Langston, and the most active community of FSU fans anywhere. Warchant.com is part of the On3 network with a national team of reporters and resources that have created industry-leading consensus recruiting ratings, transfer portal rankings, and NIL analytics. Head over to Warchant.com to take advantage of this offer as FSU heads into a 2023 season with sky-high expectations.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take-home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus, happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat-screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
This is all the benefits of being a Warchant subscriber, right? If you're watching right now, you can look along with me. You'll see Garnet and Gold, 10% off, special Warchant Days promos each month with exclusive offers for Warchant.com members, priority access and free gear at Warchant events. That's doing some things, right? Got to do it. Ask Warchant anything subscriber-only shows featuring the entire staff, a little Q&A with the entire staff, and coming soon, a new mobile app with improved functionality and less ads. That's really a good thing. Join the largest FSU fan community on the internet, everybody, at warchant.com. It's not close. Let's go. Get it on. Sign up today.
A longtime supporter of Warchant.com programming and Florida State athletics, DeLuna Coffee proudly presents you the Warchant Gameday Postgame Call-In Show. FSU alumni owned and operated. DeLuna Coffee's Ed and Brett Lemmix have a combined 30 years of experience in the coffee industry. DeLuna Coffee's claim to fame is their Blue Angels blend, known as the first ever food or beverage item to be licensed by a military branch. A percentage of proceeds from the Blue Angels blend, Midnight Shift, and High Noon Lawman's blend go to the U.S. Navy Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Program, the Raleigh Foundation of Pensacola, and the Escambia County Sheriff's Foundation, respectively. For a limited time only, DeLuna Coffee's Voodoo Dark Espresso Blend is buy one, get one free. Head over to DeLunaCoffee.com to check out that deal, as well as the Warchant Pick Your Poison Bundle. From west of I-4 all the way through the Florida Panhandle, look for DeLuna Coffee in your local Publix in the Florida Locals section. You can also always head to DeLunaCoffee.com today.
Of Warchant Game Day, and it's been a fun one. Love doing this show. Love being here at Hotel Indigo.
Z-Chan?
Who we saw earlier.
Yep.
Writes FSU finally puts together a complete game, 56-17. Let's go Noles. You know, it's interesting. We just met a gentleman here who's in attendance at Hotel Indigo, being awfully kind, and came over and complimented the work we're doing at Warchant. We appreciate that a lot. And his question, Ev's question was, what would it take for everybody in this fan base to become a believer in this team?
To calm the hell down.
What would it take for all of us to believe in Florida State? Like, what for? And I'm sure he means, and exactly what I'm implying as well. What does it mean? What has to happen for us to believe this team can, not that they will, but could, win a national championship?
Right. And
that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about winning the ACC. We know they're already in they're already in contention to do that.
Not to survive, but to thrive.
But to thrive, to go win, to go be one of the best two teams in the country, to play for a title, to get to the college football playoff. What would have to happen?
Yeah.
And let's just use, for the purpose, let's use today's game. And I jokingly said to him at the time, and I'm kind of half serious, 56-0 Noles today. I mean, like, go put a beating on somebody that you're better than. You are, and I'm saying this is unequivocal. Florida State is better at every single position.
Yeah, I would say something that is in the JCS lexicon that I like better than the overused term swagger. It's overused.
Yeah.
Bravado. Play with bravado. Fire off the ball.
Confidence,
on offense.
bravado.
Get downhill
know you're
on
better
defense.
and play that way.
Right. Play with the confidence that you know you're badasses, and they're going to have to come up to a level that's uncomfortable for them. They can't get there. They don't know it yet, but we're about to teach them. Like, where is that? And that's been there in stretches for this defense when you see them play aggressively, get downhill. They like to do it. And I'm going to compare it to a team that they can't compare to. But 2013 had an attitude about them.
It was cruel.
They had an aptitude on top of the attitude, but you could go back a few years earlier. 2010 was going to hit you. They might have lost the game, and they lost quite a few that year. But that 2010 defense, every single game, put somebody in the dirt, and it was uncomfortable. It could have been Mike Harris, Greg Reed, Kendall Smith, Nigel Bradham, whoever it was. Somebody was going to put you into the ground and impose a physical will.
Well, we got
a little bit more of that would be good.
We got answers from the chat here for Ev's question, and I appreciate this. Thanks for chiming in, guys. The only cure would be an FSU route, 55-10, 0 turnovers, 150-plus yards on the ground. Bill writes, I think it's more than believing in this team, but believing the NCAA, ESPN, and ACC won't mess with us. I'm not conspiratorial, Bill. Listen, it would behoove the ACC to have a team make the college football playoff, trust me. Yeah. And Florida State looks like the only team right now that has an opportunity to really do that. So I don't think they're out to get us. I don't think they like us. I don't think they like us. The NCAA part of it,
they're a malicious organization.
Well, and they've been hypocritical their whole existence, but that's not solely directed at FSU. They've screwed around with tons of people and tons of situations. So, again, that's not
hyper-focused. They make a politician blush with how hypocritical they are.
And I don't think the ACC doesn't have to like us, but the bottom line is football is king, and they understand that, and the best team in this conference right now is Florida State. So I'm not worried about that.
If we get mauled in the trenches again and there are no flags, I'm going to start looking around because that happened at BC, that happened at Clemson. I get it, that there is a bigger, stronger, faster.
I just go back to
happens.
Mickey Andrews on that over and over again. He's right. Holding's a you problem, man. Get off the block. 4 quarters of good play for one, increased first down efficiency. That's right, R. Wilmer. You just nailed it. That's the answer, period. 4 quarters of good football. Now, listen, if it's 56-0 in the third and they got the third stringers out there and it's sloppy, I don't care. But I get your point. Your larger point is correct. And then the other part about this is increased first down efficiency. Yep. I've been saying it from the get-go. I said it after Southern Miss, and people got mad at me because we scored 66 points.
50, I think, was the number you cited. 50 times where they were not successful on a given down.
Yes, success rate charts these things. We were unsuccessful on over 50 plays against Southern Miss. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. So my point is, and I was mad after that game, and I was like, how do I articulate this after a 66-point outburst?
This was the one. So they go 4 of 14, I think it is, on third down in that game.
Awful.
And then Norvell,
He's
turns
like, well,
around.
We converted it on fourth down.
Well, we were 4 or 5 on fourth, so I count those as success. Dude, we should not be having to go for it 5 times on fourth down.
We should be in fourth down situations against Southern Miss. That's what I'm saying. So that was ridiculous. First down efficiency. Come on,
effort
guys.
on the spin. But
win first down today, guys. I mean, they haven't really done that this year. So, R. Wilmer, you win. Also, let's see. Love the old state logos, gents. FAU has been ripping that off. Yeah, they have. Dominant offensive line play would need to happen. Yeah.
Just aggressive. It doesn't even have to be dominant. We are timid.
Let me say this. I don't believe this offensive line will be dominant this year. I do believe this offensive line will be the reason, if it doesn't happen, that we don't win the national championship. I have now come to the conclusion that this offensive line is slightly above average at best. So that's what we are. Now, you can scheme around it. They won games and found ways to be efficient on offense at times with a bad offensive line a couple years ago. So that is, to me, the Achilles heel of this team. Now, there is some depth concerns at certain other positions. Linebacker is one of them. Safety is a big-time depth concern. But I would tell you the overall talent level on the offensive line is not what I thought it was going to be coming into the season. We were wrong about that. Myers is not the player we thought he was, period. He's not. Robert Scott's been injured. Mo Smith's been injured. They are not elite. They're just a little above average.
Gotta love people who have those ridiculous cars. Anyway, you're tough. Mo Smith is integral to this team. We know that for the last 2 years. Hopefully he comes back for another year because we can't cultivate another option at center.
Not
and
yet.
that's really annoying.
Currently unable.
It's really, really annoying. But I do think that this offensive line can be better than above average if Robert Scott's on the field. I mean, that's what we've learned. The Clemson game taught us the value of what Robert Scott brings to the table. If you got him at left and Bless Harris at right, and we're going...
And we don't know about Bless today either.
I know.
We'll have to watch. Again, watching personnel is going to be big.
I agree. But I always thought Byers was a guard. I don't know what the experiment was. And frankly, in camp, I didn't see him take a rep at guard. So they don't think he is. But I think he is still. And he's got another year beyond this one, by the way, to cultivate whatever it's going to be for his career. But I think Robert Scott at left fixes a lot of things in the running game. I think gap gets better. Your counter gets better if Robert Scott is on the field. We'll see what the lineup looks like today. But I keep coming back to, what did we learn in the bye week? What do we think we are now? What are we going to define ourselves as? Is it something that Mike doesn't want to be, where we're 4 wide more often? I mean, that's a strength.
You might have to do it.
Our pass pro is good.
Have to do it.
It's better than above average pass pro. Better than above average pass pro.
Washington, I think, will play today to answer some questions out there. If he does, he's a good player. He's not an elite player. But that'll answer some questions.
He might be better at counter than Byers, though. Could very well be.
I think you're correct. I think you're correct. We did have a question here, and we got to wrap it up. But, Marlo, we do not know if Akeem Dent is playing today. Game time decision.
Stay tuned to warchant.com, the Warchant X or Twitter page for updates from pregame. We'll keep you, and if you're a member, thank you very much for being a member. It's just $1 for a month. But you go to the Tribal Council, they're in the press box. They're going to give you updates from warm-ups. That's the best way to get those updates.
Robert, I really appreciate you weighing in here and contributing, but I also really appreciate the sentiment. It makes us feel good. It's why we do it. It's also fun for us to do, and that's awfully nice of you to say. He writes, making the wait much more bearable, gentlemen. Good noon games. Good noon games have been on display today. And speaking of those good noon games, one final check. Thank you, Robert, by the way. This is what we got. We had 20-17 Oklahoma and Texas. We got Maryland up on Ohio State in the second half, 17-10. Ooh, now it gets juicy, gentlemen. 25-20, Missouri and LSU. Mizzou with the lead there. That game is late in the third quarter. LSU with the ball. Doesn't this starting to feel like LSU's going to win this game?
It does.
At one point, it was 22-7, and it's now 25-20.
35-32.
Yeah,
there you go. There's your number.
You can see it. All the other top 25 action is later today. But, yeah, they've been really good noon games. And, hey, Oklahoma, Texas has not disappointed. What a great game, and that's a fun rivalry. We got any other scores? Yeah, Boston College has just pulled ahead of Army 20-17.
Wanted to say thank you to Robert. It goes both ways. If it's not for you guys, we don't exist. But it's more bearable for us to talk it out. We're talkers for a living. But if we just had to sit there and pace in our living rooms ahead of a kickoff for 3:30, I don't know that I could handle it. I'm very anxious about what I'm going to see today.
Yeah, I'm excited too. By the way, all of you collectively, let's pour energy into UTSA coming back and getting a win. They're down 7-0 currently. We're all going to root for UTSA, Tom.
UTSA, as they're known.
Let's go, UTSA. Everybody understands the importance of a big UTSA win today. I may or may not have bet on that game.
That's the only one you bet on today, though. So,
Big card today, guys. Big card
it's
today.
It's an Andy Reid-sized plate sheet of a card today for Jeff.
R. Wilmer, thanks you, Matt, Tom, Jeff, Corey. Have a great game and day. Be good, everybody. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Director Ben.
We want to thank Director Ben. Is absolutely right. Thank all of you guys for coming out. Thank you guys who listened online. And we will talk to you next weekend. It's another home game, which we're looking forward to.
One more note for the people in the chat. You asked about it. We talked about it before the Clemson game. But you can go into the post-game show link, which you can find. It's on our social accounts.
And that way you guys can chat.
And if you want to chat during the game, you've all wanted a chance to do that. That's all you got to do.
It's cool, actually. Yeah, nice little community.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Good job, Tom Lang, always.
Good job,
and it's always a pleasure to be here. Our thanks to Hotel Indigo.
Jay.
We will be back next week, and we shall celebrate. Go Noles. Until next time, take care, everybody.